So yeah, I snuck in late at night, only to find a whole load of people with picks and shovels, brushes, and, the normal archaeological paraphernalia. Nobody seemed to notice I was even there, at least not at first. They were all too hard at work, and the odd thing for how late at night it was, they all seemed happy. Like, drugged happy. I got to see the hole they were digging. I got to see the big, black sarcophagus, I guess obsidian. But why there's an obsidian coffin in this part of the world? I wanted to get closer, but then this woman, she seemed to be leading the dig. She stopped me. She was, I guess, beautiful is a simple word when describing her poise, her confidence, her clarity of voice. She asked why I wasn't working, and I stuttered, stumbled over myself. I was bewitched. Is that the word? I couldn't look away from her. Then her eyes narrowed. She told me I shouldn't be there. She looked unhappy. My heart broke. It sounds ridiculous, but somehow I'd fallen head over heels in love with her within a minute. I fell to my knees, but she commanded me to leave. And it was like she was a nightmare from my childhood all of a sudden. She went from love to hate. I couldn't help but get the hell out of there and never look back. I know where the dig is, and it's still going on, but I'm too terrified to return. What did she do to me? Superstardom, enthrallment, sublimitus. Presence is one of those disciplines that's just one of the darkest, evil, maniacal things. Dominate is sheer control over the mind. Being able to force a person to do something that you want them to do by giving them an order. It's blunt, but the subtle blade, with patience, cuts deeper. Slowly through the ribcage and into the heart itself. Presence fucks with your emotions. And anybody who's ever been in any kind of toxic relationship that's really gotten in there and fucked with your head knows exactly what that feels like. Dominate's wrong. Presence is evil. Most vampires are creatures of grace and lethality, associated with horrific violence and devastating beauty. Kindred embody opposites, alternating between nightmare and dream depending on the onlooker and the vampire's whims. Presence is a discipline that expresses this bipolar existence. Used to attract victims or disperse them in fear, presence allows crowd control, emotional manipulation, and enforced devotion. A mortal's greatest fear could stand before them and suddenly look like the most radiant creature on earth. Many presence practitioners use this discipline to easily acquire feeding vessels, while others use it to stalk the knights as creatures of horror, making weak-willed kind flee terrified, unsure of what they've just seen. Effective as a lure, as well as defense, vampires with presence enjoy an easier nightlife at the expense of forgetting what feelings projected at them are normal and which are compelled. Presence has always had that dual use of creating love and fear at the same time. But it was always so much more simpler. In the original editions that I was used to playing in, we had Awe, which was amazing, and the separation between LARP and tabletop was massively different. Where in tabletop, Awe would force everybody within a radius to notice you, to pay attention to you, regardless of whether or not they liked what you were saying or not. They were interested. You caught their attention. But then there was Dread Gaze, Dread Gaze was pure fear. Now in LARP, awe converted over into a retest of social challenges. You could burn a social trait for the night to give yourself that extra boost that you needed in social situations, which was nice, and that's what I learned first, so that's what made sense to me. Dread Gaze was a way to bring that beast out, point it at an enemy, and frighten them away. Make it so that people just didn't want to fuck with you. And that was a great thing to have, too. My first character was a Toreador, as is a good number of you out there, I'm sure. Being able to do the things that you can do with presence in that game really helped me out. Characteristics. Presence affects the emotions of those subject to it, not the mind. While this is useful in that victims are cognizant, unlike dominate, they're not under the direct control of the user, and thus often unpredictable. In order to be affected by presence, the subject must be in the physical presence of the user, or at least within earshot. The discipline does not transmit electronically unless the user possesses star magnetism, which is a presence level 5 power. Detecting the use of presence is very hard unless one has access to sense the unseen aspects 1, and can even then be too subtle to notice unless one is looking for it specifically. Presence powers effects do not stack, so someone using awe and entrancement on the same subject would only add their presence rating once in any social-based persuasion roll. In combat, only the Dread Gaze and Majesty powers have any effect, as charm is of little use when someone has decided that they want you hurt. Type, mental. That's interesting to me because presence was always a social-based discipline, but I can also see how it could be mental in that. Masquerade threat, low to medium. A subtle power people seldom realize presence has affected them at all. As with most disciplines, its higher powers can leave puzzled witnesses behind, especially once the effect has worn off. Blood resonance, sanguine. The beautiful and lustful, those completely infatuated with the vampire, models and actors and movie stars, compelling public and private speakers, from politicians to car salesmen, YouTube sensations, and Instagram influencers. I can't really go more than a video or two without saying how much I love the feeding systems and the idea of the resonances, because presence truly does give off a sanguine vibe, and I couldn't have described it better myself. I really do love the way that it's presented. Now, let's get into the powers. Level 1, awe. Anyone in the presence of the vampire finds their attention inexplicably drawn to them. Those listening to the vampire speak might suddenly agree on subjects where they once held different viewpoints. While this power doesn't cause rapt infatuation, it is still strong enough to sway the minds of most mortals. Cost free. Dice pool. Manipulation plus presence versus composure plus intelligence. System. Add the presence rating to any skill roll involving persuasion or performance, as well as to other charisma-related rolls at storyteller discretion. Anyone aware that they're being affected can try to resist with a contest of composure plus intelligence versus the user's manipulation plus presence. On a win, the target can resist the effect for one scene. A critical win makes the target immune for the entire night. Once the power wears off, victims revert to their previous opinions. Duration: one scene or until intentionally ended. Awe is presented here in such a way that it's more socially combative. And with a system where you could very well lose your life due to social tests, and the idea of loss of willpower involved in those social tests, I think this has its place. I like this a lot better than the idea of just the retest we used to get in Laws of the Night. Level 1. Daunt. Instead of attracting people, the vampire uses presence to repel. With this power, the user appears threatening and exudes an aura of menace, powerful enough to make most mortals avoid their attention, and even vampires think twice about acting against them. Cost: free. System: add the user's presence rating to any intimidation rolls. Attacking the user requires a resolve plus composure roll difficulty of 2. Vampires cannot use awe and daunt simultaneously. Duration: 1 scene, or until intentionally ended. The idea of being able to use this in this way works so well. I think my storyteller used to allow us to use awe as a retest for intimidation. I think she just let us use them for social challenges in general, when in reality they should really have only been used to persuade people onto our side. But the idea of them having the common power of presence, what people think about, but also having the dark opposite of that, makes presence such a more versatile tool. If you're playing a Brujah who is not interested in social schmoozing and getting people to be on your side, but are more, or even a Ventru, on dominating and getting what you want, Daunt makes so much more sense than Awe in that situation. So they've truly made it so that there's something for every type of character when it comes to this type of power. Now, moving on to something else. Within the Anarch Guide on page 185, Presence, Level 1, Eyes of the Serpent, Amalgam, Protean 1. The eyes of the vampire turn into slitted serpent-like orbs, able to freeze a mortal meeting the vampire's gaze in place. The user can even mesmerize other vampires with this power, though the effect is short-lived and likely to rouse the victim's ire. Cost: free. Dice pool: charisma plus presence versus wits plus composure. System: by catching the eye of the mortal, the vampire can immobilize the victim, keeping them frozen in place for as long as they themselves maintain eye contact. The effect can only be maintained on a single victim at a time, and ends if they suffer damage or are forcefully removed. Speech is still possible, though shouting is not. In order to paralyze a vampire in the same way, the user must win a contest of charisma plus presence versus wits plus composure. The vampire victim can escape paralysis on any turn after the first by spending a point of willpower. Duration: until eye contact is broken or the scene ends. So they brought Eyes of the Serpent over to Presence. This was the first time that I had ever seen a discipline that would classically be considered clan specific was brought in such a way. Protean being what we just acknowledged Gangrel for, but the idea of Protean and Presence being used together to create the very first level of what we consider Perpentis is such an interesting way of running about things. I'd seen a couple of other amalgams when it came to like Dominate and Presence and Aspects and stuff like that, but the idea that Setites are running around using their presence in this way with the help of their Protean to bring out their beast, to bring out that snake inside of them, is such a great way of going about things. I am a fan of this. There's a couple of power amalgams that I'm not really that big on, but this one right here caught my attention in a good way the first time I saw it. I have nothing negative about the way that V5 decided to handle Serpentis. Presence level 2, Lingering Kiss. And here we are back within the errata, located in the V5 companion. I have compared these two, and seriously, the errata is much better, but I will go ahead and I will read both for you guys just so that you have the comparison. This right here, what I'm reading right now, is what's in the core book. Lingering Kiss. The kiss of a vampire induces near ecstasy in mortals, but this power leaves other kisses in the dust. Mortals fed upon by the user become addicted to the kiss, obsessing over it, and even seeking the vampire out for repeated feedings. Mortals often become anemic, self-harm, or even die from this addiction, but vampires find it a useful power for cultivating a herd. Cost: free. System: the vampire can choose to use this power or not during each feeding. The user adds dice equal to their presence to any subsequent charisma attribute assisted pool against the bitten subject. A mortal fed upon with this power can make a willpower test difficulty equal to the user's presence every week to resist the effects. Winning this test for 3 consecutive weeks breaks the effect, as does a single critical win. Duration: until successfully resisted. That sounds great. However, let's check out what the errata says. Lingering Kiss errata. The kiss of a vampire induces near ecstasy in the victim, but this power leaves other kisses in the dust. Victims fed upon by the user are temporarily empowered, but also become addicted to the kiss, obsessing over it and even seeking the vampire out for repeated feedings. Mortals often become anemic, self-harm, or even die from the addiction. Addicting other vampires is also possible, with the caveat that obsessed vampires demanding to be fed from risk the user becoming bloodbound. Once under a blood bond, a vampire becomes unable to use this power on other vampires, being limited to employing it on mortals. Cost: free. System: the vampire can choose to use this power during each feeding, where they sate at least one hunger. The victim gains a bonus equal to half of the user's presence round up to one social attribute of their choice. This benefit lasts for a single night, and once it fades, withdrawal strikes, and all the victim's actions not spent working towards acquiring a new fix receives a dice penalty equal to the initial bonus. The victim in withdrawal can spend willpower to ignore the penalties foreseen, and the penalties go away after a number of nights equal to the user's presence rating. This power cannot be used on other vampires by a user who is under the thrall of a blood bond. Also, vampires with unbondable merit cannot acquire this power. Duration: a number of nights equal to the user's presence rating. So as you can see, that has changed quite a bit. I'm not really sure why I'm having a focus issue, but whatevs. That is a massive change, because not only are you having rules for being able to use this on Kindred, but also the victim of this gets a boost in their social attributes. And also they changed the duration. The duration was a huge thing, because originally Lingering Kiss was forever until they got over it with willpower challenges. Now it lasts for a number of nights equal to the user's presence rating. So that means that you have to stay on the person. You have to continuously use it. Now, the designer did have a comment here also, which I find very important to go over as well. We appreciated the revised effects on this power as printed in the latest set of the core books, as tempting the player rather than just the character is the best form of temptation. However, the benefits of the revised power ended up off the scale, and many have found it far too open for exploits, especially for a level 2 power. Thus, we wanted to keep the concept in place while reining in the effects and making it more appropriate to its level and parent discipline. The latest version of this power is also available in the latest Vampire Errata documents, as well as future printings. So as you can see, they did a lot to change Lingering Kiss, because not only did they give you rules on how to effectively use it on vampires, plus the limitations to that, which are massively important if you want this power to remain fun in a game, but also they made it so that victims of it received a social boost due to the high that they feel while being under the spell, which I think that is an amazing thing, because as much as we like to downplay the effects on drugs to being horrible things like that, and being affected by a vampiric power is effectively being under a drug, there is that high to take into consideration. And the fact is, if you are being overwhelmed by presence, if you're being attacked by presence, you are going to feel that high first before you get wrapped into the horrible feeling of withdrawals and going through that kind of thing. So good job on that one. Also, I want to point out that it took me a little bit to explain to new players who were first coming to the game that Lingering Kiss was not literally your vampire was kissing someone. That it was biting. That's the kiss is the slang term for that feeling that humans go under, that sense of euphoria that humans go under when a vampire feeds from them. And it took me a little bit to describe that, primarily because it says the kiss of a vampire induces near ecstasy of mortal, but this power leaves other kisses in the dust, making them think that it was literally like romantic lip-to-lip kiss. And that was a little bit of a pain in the ass. So maybe the description I could have been happy not having, but being a person who has played as long as I have, and having a number of players who have also played as long as I have, if not longer, it was something that we were able to explain to people without that much hassle, but it was a thing, so I figured I'd throw that in there. Level 3, Dreadgaze. Briefly exposing their vampiric nature, the user instills a single subject with utter terror. Mortals are cowed, run, or freeze with fear, while other vampires either submit like whipped dogs or flee in frenzied Rorschach. Cost: 1 rouse check. Dice pool: Charisma plus Presence versus Composure plus Resolve. System: displaying their fangs, their face twisted in a predatory grimace. The user rolls a contest of Charisma plus Presence against their target's Composure plus Resolve. If the vampire fails this roll against their target, mortals are unable to act other than their own self-defense. Backing off for a turn, vampires are unaffected. If the vampire wins against their target, mortals run in fear. Vampires are unable to act other than their own self-defense for a turn unless they spend a willpower equal to the margin of win, to a minimum of 1. On a critical win, mortals freeze or crumble into the fetal position. Vampires must make a terror frenzy test, difficulty of 3. If they win, they are still affected as above. Duration: 1 turn. I have a couple of strange things to go over with this one. First off, I think the difficulty should be the level of presence that the vampire owns. This is a level 3 power, and therefore it is level 3, but I think if they have a 4 or a 5, it should up the difficulty on that one, just making them even more threatening with the more presence they have. Other than that, this actually is a thing that I want to say about the last power, which is Lingering Kiss, is that it's the only level 2 discipline. Now, I've checked a couple of different sources. I checked online, just in case my book was wrong, which my book my book is wrong on occasion, because it's one of the original printings and sucks due to that. I'm going to hold off before I buy next time. But even the websites and stuff that I checked said that Lingering Kiss is literally the only level 2 presence power. If there's different ones that you guys can point out to me, or if even the website was wrong, which is a possibility, please let me know. But for right now, it says that in Lingering Kiss, if you are unbondable, you cannot buy Lingering Kiss. You can't have this power. So does that mean that you're stuck buying Awe and Daunt before moving on to Dreadgaze? Or does that mean that you're stuck on there? Because from what I understand, buying disciplines works on a level scale. You can always go back and buy lower ones, but you have to have that next level to move on. So that would tell me there would have to be another level 2 somewhere if you're going to move on to a level 3, such as Dreadgaze. Or the next level, level 3, Entrancement. The vampire focuses their unnatural lure on a single person, instilling in them a rapt fascination or infatuation, akin to falling head over heels in love or meeting one's lifelong idol. The person affected does their best to remain in the vampire's good graces, but stop short of causing themselves or their other loved ones physical harm. Cost: 1 rouse check. Dice pool: charisma plus presence versus composure plus wits. System: the vampire only needs to gain the subject's attention and win a contest of charisma plus presence versus composure plus wits. The effect lasts roughly 1 hour, plus 1 per point of margin on the win. The vampire can renew this effect indefinitely, but a failure ends the effect and makes the subject immune for the rest of the night. After succeeding, the user adds dice equal to their presence rating to any social dice pool against the entranced subject. Requests resulting in obvious harm to the subject or their loved ones, or that oppose the subject's tenets, fail and require an immediate power contest roll as above, or the entrancement immediately fails. Duration: 1 hour plus 1 per point of margin. That's a gnarly power. I think that it's written kind of interesting here, because it talks about how it says requests resulting in obvious harm to subjects or their loved ones, or that oppose the subject's tenets, fail and require an immediate power contest. I would say that what requires an immediate power contest. I wouldn't say that fails. It doesn't fail automatically. That definitely would make the subject shake it off for a second, possibly. But that's what that power contest is for. So I think that it's understandable there, but it could have been written better, in my opinion. Level 4, Irresistible Voice. Amalgam, Dominate 1. The presence of the user becomes a conduit for Dominate. The vampire now only needs their voice to be heard in order to employ Dominate powers. Cost: no additional cost. System: the user's voice alone is now enough to dominate a target. This does not apply to voices transmitted through electronic media such as phones, televisions, or apartment door buzzer speakers. Duration, passive. I like the fact that this isn't just an automatic dominate thing. It could very well. There was an elder level dominate at one point that basically said that your voice was the only thing needed. I think it was actually called commanding voice. I could be wrong on that one because it has been a while since I've read those. But the idea of being able to take your presence and your dominate and mixing them together so that your voice is the only thing needed for your dominate to carry over, and have that be an automatic, no additional cost needed, makes things very interesting, especially when you're thinking about the Ventru, because the Ventru are going to be the ones who use Irresistible Voice the most, because that's in their common power set, Dominate and Presence. But yes, I'm a fan of this. I like it. Level 4, Summon. The vampire can call to themselves any person, mortal or vampire, upon whom they've previously used awe, entrancement, or majesty, or who has tasted their blood at least once. The target knows who is summoning them and the user's current location. This calling lasts for a night. After that time, the effect subsides, but the user can repeat it night after night if required to reach the target, or if the target is otherwise reluctant. Anyone summoned feels the pull towards the summoner and tries to reach them, though without endangering themselves physically or financially. They won't sell their house to buy a ticket or miss a vital meeting, but they might skip out of mortal work or social commitments. Cost: 1 rouse check. Dice pool: manipulation plus presence versus composure plus intelligence. System: the user needs to concentrate for 5 minutes and think of the person being summoned. Then roll manipulation plus presence versus composure plus intelligence. On a win, the target hears the summoning, but may or may not heed it. On a critical win, the target arrives as quickly as possible, barring immediate risk to their well-being. Duration: 1 night. I like this rewrite of Summon. The reason I say that is because as a storyteller, I have dealt with Summon on a couple of occasions where it has been a complete and utter pain in my ass. We actually had a character who had been shelved, who had the player had moved on to another character and was basically out of bounds for anything, and someone who was angry at them decided that they were going to summon them, and actually just, we tried to move on and everything, and they argued with me for a good half an hour on how this shit was going to work, and it completely ruined the night for everybody. And now I keep in mind that the rules are one thing, and dealing with an asshole player who wants to just cause problems for other people and make it so that the game is difficult and wants their way to the point where they're going to cause everybody else to suffer is another thing. But the fact that there was nothing in the rule book that could help me do it other than just going, I'm the storyteller, I say so, shut the fuck up, which I was not really accustomed to doing, and it was early on in my storytelling career, and I was hesitant to tell my players no about shit. But the thing is, it was causing so much distress in the game over that stupid discipline that just wasn't written well. 1 second. I actually just went and grabbed my copy of Laws of the Night here, just to show you exactly what I mean. Extending your incredible manipulative powers, you can draw others to your location. Your victim need not see you or even be seen by you. As long as the subject is known to you, you can summon him to your side. Once called, the subject tries to get to you by whatever means possible, completely unaware of the supernatural nature of the desire and avoiding situations that would prevent fulfilling the compulsion, like locked rooms or Overprotective allies. The compulsion lasts until the victim manages to arrive and make his presence known to you. To summon someone, you must ask the narrator's assistance. Inform the narrator of the person that you wish to summon, as well as your number of social traits and whether you are using the leadership ability. The narrator then finds the subject performing a social challenge in your stead and using the leadership ability for a retest if necessary. If the challenge succeeds, the subject comes to you as previously described. If the challenge fails, the subject manages to resist the summon. In either case, you have no knowledge of the outcome, so there is no guarantee of success. Of course, if the subject does not appear, you can wait 5 minutes and then attempt to summon the victim again. You can only summon someone that you know, at bare minimum, someone that you have had the chance to talk for a few minutes, or someone who has been targeted by your presence powers before. If another individual then uses summon on your subject, the victim heads to the summoner with the most powerful generation. If multiple summoners are of the same generation, the victim goes to the first one who exerts the power. Should 2 vampires of equal generation simultaneously summon the victim, the narrator should make a social challenge between the 2, with the victim heading to the victor. In the unusual case that summon is used on a false identity, an identity created with Mask of 1,000 Faces, for instance, the summon still brings the appropriate individual. If multiple individuals use the same false identity, then the first summon calls whichever is nearest, generally whichever one the narrator finds first, and any further summon then calls that same individual. Thus, if 3 Malkavians using Mask of 1,000 Faces all pretend to be the same imaginary person, the summon of the person brings whichever of the Malkavians is nearest and then calls the Malkavian for any future uses of summon. I understand that White Wolf back then was trying to be as detailed as possible, but it was just such a pain in the ass. This is such a more simply written out version of summon, and it defines rules that they have to be somebody that you have used a positive form of presence on, and it lasts for the night. And I'm not going to sit there being interrupted over and over and over again by someone who just continuously summons the same person who's not even in the game anymore over and over and over again. And at that point, if they did decide that they were going to waste my time, their time, and everybody else's time, I could just go, hey, this shit's not going to happen. And I don't know, maybe that's just my growing as a storyteller, being able to tell players no, but I feel that this book is just a little bit better written when it comes to that sort of thing. Level 5, Majesty. At this pinnacle of the discipline, the vampire can amplify their contestants to supernatural levels. Whether they appear as heart-rendingly beautiful, monstrously terrifying, or wielding absolute command, everyone who views them is struck by their image. Unable to act or even speak against the vampire, to experience Majesty is to be in the presence of the divine or the infernal. Cost: 2 rouse checks. Dice pool: Charisma plus Presence versus Composure plus Resolve. System: people in the presence of the user can only stare slack-jawed or avert their eyes in fear or submission. Anyone wanting to act in any way in opposition to the user, except for self-preservation, must successfully win a contest of their composure plus resolve versus the vampire's charisma plus presence. A win allows 1 turn of freedom plus 1 per point of margin. Only a critical win resists the effects for the entire scene. Duration 1 scene. Oh, Majesty. Majesty is another one of those powers that just like that ends a confrontation just straight out. And not many people invest in presence to actually take advantage of this, and I don't understand it. Because seriously, if I had presence, I would just be steamrolling to Majesty all the time. Because the moment anything goes wrong, 2 rouse checks, presence, ha ha. Ha ha. No one's fucking with me. And even if they decide to, they're going to get 1 turn unless they critically win against me, which doesn't happen that very often. Majesty is just, dude, if you got presence, take Majesty. It's dumb. Now, there is the next level. Level 5, Star Magnetism. The presence power of the user now affects people viewing them on live feeds and hearing them over the phone. Recorded images or messages do not retain the effects, however. Cost 1 additional rouse check. System: Awe, Daunt, and Entrancement can be transmitted through live feeds via screens or phones. If Entrancement is used, the victim's name must be spoken clearly, as that power only affects 1 person at a time. Anyone else viewing the same transmission only finds the user charming, but not supernaturally so. Duration: as power used. I think that Star Magnetism definitely does have its place, and I can see certain vampires taking that over Majesty. I wouldn't. I can kind of see the whole concept of like, hey, here's this TV that no one else is noticing talking to you directly. This really fucks with people, and I like it. I can see Malkavians jumping all over Star Magnetism. I think it's primarily aimed at Clan Toreador, definitely, but Majesty just still holds it for me. I think Majesty works so much better than Star Magnetism. It is an interesting power though, and I can't wait to see somebody use it in my game. Nobody has gotten up that high yet though in Thicker Than Water, so we will see how that works soon, because we do have a good amount of players who have access to presence. But that is our look at presence in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. I do look forward, as always, to hearing your thoughts on presence, because it's a simple discipline, but it's so devious. It slips under the radar when it comes to how evil disciplines can truly be, but seriously, the ones that people don't realize are the darkest, most like disturbing powers, can be some of the darkest, most disturbing powers. Presence is right the fuck up there. But I am Voivode Maquette. This is Our World of Darkness, and thank you for joining me with this in-depth look into presence, and taking the time also to not only read through like the errated version of Lingering Kiss, but also the old Laws of the Night version of Summon, which fucked my game up for like 2 sessions one time several years ago. Anyway, as always, I look forward to hearing about you, not only on your thoughts towards presence, but also your experiences. I want your stories. If anybody has anything they want to add or comment that is too much for the comments section below, please feel free to go to the Facebook page for Voivode Maquette Presents Our World of Darkness and join the community over there, and we have a good time going back and forth, and memes and all that crap is over there. So I am Voivode Maquette. This is Our World of Darkness, and I will see you next time. Good evening.